Hey there.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing okay. How about you?
Good.
Just trying to get everything pulled up here. This is that one meeting where it's like, I need all the documents. Like I need more screens than what we usually have.
I know. I said to Hallie, I'm used to having my desktop at home and then my laptop. And so this is I'm just going to try to do it all right here and we'll see how it goes.
Yep, I think we'll be able to pull it off. I think we'll do it.
Hello, everybody. It's a lot.
Hey there.
So we heard from Burrow that she may be late or not able to attend this evening. I have not heard from Brian, but given that it's 6:30, we will convene the Policy and Governance Committee meeting for April 29th, 2021. And those of the board attending at this moment are myself, Daphne Mooring, Jennifer Chrysler, and Matt Campbell. And we have, I think there were 18 total items or policies on the regular part of the agenda, and then we had some to revisit. So we will work through that. And then just looking down through the list, a lot of these are technically inspired changes due to regulatory or policy, title federal policy changes. So if we want to start with policy 1422 on the agenda, which is non-discrimination and equal employment opportunity. And again, that is one of 11 that in our spreadsheet with the summaries of them. Those are all changes being driven by a lot of its Title IX regulations dealing with anti-harassment, EEO, discrimination, and 504. And a lot of it is clarification type of changes, adding definitions and fine-tuning pronouns and things like that. So Steve, how do you want to handle it? Just work through them one by one?
Yeah, I think we need to. I think it's most of the recommendations are just in keeping with the law and the trainings that we're doing. But I think we can go through these rather quickly. It's just like this first one is just definitions according to the law, and so and what we call things when we deal with Title IX is really important.
Yes.
I think just if you guys are okay with it, just working through each one, I think we can get through them pretty quickly. Unless you have another thought, Daphne.
No, I think it's probably the best way to go about it.
Yeah.
It's not always the funnest way to go about it. It's the
Yeah.
proper way.
Yeah, it's right. So this first one is, is really important. If somebody has a complaint, they're the complainant, and somebody who has a complaint filed against them, they're the respondent. And respondent is sort of a neutral term so that person has due process. We're not saying, the guilty party or the perpetrator or, and so it's just, these definitions are really, really important because everybody has a right to due process. And so I think if you guys are okay with these, just maybe take a quick look at them. I think this one is what they recommend. And do you guys have green print on yours? Do you see? Okay, because I'm looking through paper copies. I have both electronic and paper. So are you guys okay with these?
So I guess the question at the bottom of page 1, Neil is suggesting that our COs, our compliance officers, be both a male and a female.
Yes.
And that also comes into play in policy 5517. In fact, there's a lot of parallels between
Mm-hmm.
22 and 5517. So
Yeah. And maybe we should do that one next, because they're so similar. But yeah, the suggestion is to have a male and a female, and right now we have 2 females. So we probably need to address that.
The other question I had on page 2, we have a language change that employees, it used to be, our current one says employees are encouraged to promptly report incidents. And the new language says employees are required to report incidents.
Mm-hmm.
What's the consequence of employee failure to report if we're requiring it?
I think it just is better for the claimant and the respondent. And I still think you have to hear the case. I mean, you still have to look at it, but waiting just complicates things. And so I don't know if your question, Matt, is what's going to happen to somebody if they don't follow through with that requirement of reporting things, required. I think at the end of the day, there are people, right, that probably should report things that don't. And so I'm not sure what the consequence for that is. Right.
My only issue is that, and I fully support encouraging them to promptly report. I think that is strong language. Required to means that there could be a violation of sort or a consequence if they don't follow through. And I'm concerned that the policy doesn't lay out the consequence. Yeah, I can see that. And I think when you read this, it's probably more not so much the claimant. It's if you overhear somebody doing something that's discriminatory, it's your duty to report it. I think that's what that's getting at. That's how I read it too, is a third party or an observer duty to report. You use those words, and I'm concerned about that. I want to have a culture where we feel comfortable reporting and protecting, and that there are lines of communication open. My concern is the words required to. Yeah. Do you want me to check with one of our attorneys on that to see? Does anybody else have a concern about that language required? I think it's part of the law, but I can double check.
I guess I understand. I mean, we're asking our employees, and I think if we can't, I guess I don't have the consternation about the requirement. I think if some person is being unfairly treated and we ignore it, that an employee ignores it,
right,
that creates a environment that we don't want children learning in, I don't think. So I guess yes, I think we need to check with an attorney to get the understanding and what the as Matt said, if there's a penalty if you don't do it, there is it may not be to that employee. It's probably going to be borne more by the person who is receiving the treatment, obviously, right?
Right. Yeah, so I think we can't be passive when we see discrimination. We're being bystanders if we don't say something, and we're not doing our part to create a work environment that is where everyone kind of feels safe. And we're allowing discrimination to take place, and then therefore allowing a hostile work environment to take place. So I'm okay with the language. I think it's important that people do their part. Sometimes, they may take the, not want to get involved or not want to create controversy. And we're never going to have a safe environment that's non-discriminatory if we allow folks to do that. So I know when there's, concerns with abuse of a child, it's a mandatory duty that we as school folks report that immediately. And I see this in the same vein. So I don't have a concern because I think it's what should happen. And it's the only way we're going to have a workplace that's safe and non-discriminatory. But I've made a note that I will check it out and see if that language is too, isn't what it's supposed to be. That sound good?
I also want to share with people that may not have the policies in front of them. You can access our school district policies by going to our gahannaschools.org website. Go to the tab Board of Education and scroll down a couple inches past where my screen shows, and there's a link to our policies, bylaws and policies. And I'll try to announce the number that we're working on. In this case, it's policy number 1422.
And we want to know what is the consequence too, right? If people don't report.
Right.
Okay.
If it's a requirement, there should be a consequence.
Okay. All right.
On that same page, when you go up a little bit, when we're describing the names and titles and contact information for our compliance officers will be published annually on the school district's website. I also know that it is part of each handbook, school district parent handbook.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I assume it's part of the staff handbook. I have not been able to validate that. Should we include that in this list? I know I think it was already X'd in the similar 5517 list. Or we do that just as a public service. Might as well take credit for it, right? If we're doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds good.
So the way they word it in 5517 is, shoot, had it here, now I don't. In the parent and staff handbooks.
Yeah.
If we want to add that to this one.
Yeah. Okay.
Anybody else have anything on 1422? Okay,
Do you want to stay on 517 because they're similar and just knock that out?
sure, let's do it.
So the Neola changes are to take out about 2/3 the way down the page where it says, for purposes of this policy, school district community means.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what the current has, and the recommendation is to take this out, and it's in red on page 1.
Because
And there's other changes throughout.
Wait,
we're on policy number 5517 because of the parallels between the two policies. So you'll have to jump to that one.
Yeah, sorry, Jennifer. We opened it up to see the parallel between that one and 1422.
yeah, I had that. Okay, I closed. I didn't realize I wasn't paying attention to the number. I got you.
Yeah.
So then they describe that school district community and do a lot of definition additions at the top.
Yeah.
too.
And it's the same definitions basically in 1422 on page 2.
On page 3, if people are ready to move to that.
Yep.
Item F looks like there's an option that we need to decide on whether we're going to include or not. Page 3. And the list of prohibited acts that would constitute sexual harassment under this policy.
Yeah, I think we should include obscene gestures. Just based on my experience of, things that have happened. So I think we should include that.
I would agree.
I do.
Matt, are you okay with that?
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I have a further question on letter J. It looks like it's an addition. I didn't see any new laws in regarding to leering or staring. And I mean, I certainly want to create an environment free of harassment. Have we had a situation where we've had to prove that someone was staring or leering in an inappropriate way? It seems like a very challenging element to either prove or defend.
Yeah, I know that is a common thing that, claimants come with, when they feel like they're being harassed by a respondent. And so, but there has to be, it's the respondent gets due process. There has to be examples, witnesses, you know what I mean? That it'll be investigated. So it's not just a fait accompli that they're guilty, but that can happen and make people feel uncomfortable. So I think it's important to have that in there.
Okay. It seems vague. It seems like it's very difficult. It's up to interpretation, and that's the problem with it.
Yeah.
Actions, I can prove all the others because they're actions. There's things that are said, things that can be observed. Staring into space in a certain direction might be J.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
kind of difficult to defend or prove.
I don't think so. Maybe or staring, but I think leering at someone. I think leering is pretty clear of an action. I get I think when you're kind of staring off and you're looking across the room and somebody might interpret something, but when you're harassing someone.
Right. It would be enjoined with probably some other of these letters on the list.
Or it doesn't necessarily have to be, but I think when you're leering at someone, that seems to be pretty I think that word right there is what makes that a little bit different for me, Matt, only because I get what you're saying. You don't want to misinterpret, but some of these other things too are if somebody says something, you still have to prove it. You still have to, some of them are still things that you have to be able to prove. But I do think the word leering kind of suggests that it's more than just a casual glance or you just got lost in space somewhere and next thing you know, you realize you're staring at somebody. I think it's a very intentional kind of action.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's probably happened more than once and to more than one person, so I think I think it's appropriate to have it. And
Okay.
Sue is on the YouTube and she just sent me a text about mandatory reporting, and she feels like it's the same in 1422. So I think that's an answer to our question, but I'll follow up with Nicole just to get her take on it.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sue's more than welcome to join us too. We'd love to have her if she wants to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to add.
I think it's great that she's on the YouTube.
I do too. I think that's amazing. Send her the link.
Yeah. Okay. Can we move on then?
Sure.
All right. Oh, there's another. So then I'm on page 4 of this one.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the one, Daphne, that the male and female compliance officers. So I think that's
Yeah, I didn't catch it on the first one, but it's on
Yeah.
both.
I think we
Okay.
need to fix that.
I agree.
I'd like to make a suggestion that in the transition to adding a male, if we end up having 2 females simultaneously, I think that would be fine. Just so that we're basically adding a 3rd person and then we narrow it back
Okay.
down to 2 people.
Yeah.
I just don't want someone to finally get up the courage to report something and then be told that they're not talking to the right person.
Yeah.
I
that's a
would
good
hate
point.
for that to happen. So I think if we add a 3rd and then eventually go back down to 2, I'd be fine with that.
Okay.
I'm open to suggestions from the others, obviously. I mean,
All right. Any other comments about that part?
No.
Yeah, I'm on page 5.
And this is where I think we can just, in the middle, add, we have the names and titles are published on the school district website and in the parent and staff handbooks.
Oh, okay.
Is item A. And I think it should be the parallel to the other, to 1422. Why not, right? We should make it as easy to access as possible.
Right.
This one's the 13 pager. It's a book.
Yeah. Okay, ready for page 6?
Mhm. So this one looks like it's striking a lot and then it adds it in a couple pages later, doesn't it?
Right. Yeah.
Or incorporates it in. Or they got rid of the concept of an anti-compliance officer. That was fascinating that it was ever there to begin with. An anti-compliance officer.
Yes, this is all in keeping with the law. This is
Yeah, I
important.
didn't see anything that
Okay.
wasn't very legalese. And
Yeah, I think it's cleaner too. It's just more tight, you know, and concise and clear, I think.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm on page 7. So they struck all that at the top third of the page.
to me, 7, 8, and 9 are all just transitioning to the common definitions and reference points, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think so too. It's just clean up.
clarifying things.
I like on 9 that it's instead of a final decision, it's a written decision. I like that
Yeah.
change.
Yes, yeah, that's important. That's part of the law as well, I believe. Everybody good with 7, 8, 9?
Is there,
Yes.
we have to make it the bottom of 9?
I'm sorry, you broke up a little. Yeah.
Is there a choice we have to make at the bottom of 9?
Yes. And so I think the second one. I don't think it should be final. I think there should be an appeal process beyond the superintendent.
I agree.
Do you guys have any thoughts about that?
No,
No.
I mean, and it goes through a different channel. It would go through the treasurer CFO, so it gives a clean path.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll check that one. All right, on page 10.
Is the whole retaliation section new, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that they don't define the consequences, right? Like, you know, Matt's point at the beginning of the first policy,
Mm-hmm.
but every situation is unique. I would.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
it's a first offense, second offense. I mean, you would have to.
Yeah, if you get, if you had sort of preconceived consequences, I'm not sure you're, you know, giving people due process, and so I think you're right. Every situation is different.
Is everybody okay with the addition of the retaliation section?
I am.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, page 11, just a couple of changes at the bottom.
Who was responsible for the retention of the records prior to this change?
The treasurer's office, right, Mike? You guys just had some training on that.
I don't recall any training on that, Steve.
Might have happened right before you got here. Crystal and I think Michelle were a part of that.
And now
I
it's
could-
transferring to the compliance officers
Right,
under your direction, right, Steve?
right.
I would think that's where it should be.
Yeah, I would too. It's a lot of. I think at the top of page 11, Matt, it might speak to the professional requirement to report a little bit here with regard to child abuse, sexual misconduct, at least. Any questions about those sections with regard to allegations and education and training? How do we do our training? Is it the online training for anti-harassment policy
Yes,
annual?
yeah,
Amy?
it's quite a few hours of training. We've been doing it with Bricker and Eckler.
And then the retention, there are additional O, P, Q, and R. Right now, it appears that we were on board with A through N. And then optional are O, P, Q, and R with regard to documentation about sharing of investigative materials and documents. Is that something that we should get advice from our counsel on? with regard to those? I think that would be my comfort level. I don't know how Jennifer and Matt feel.
Yeah, we can do that.
That makes sense. Just to kind of cover all our bases.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't know what the consequences or benefits of O through RR. I'd like to hear their opinion on it.
I agree. Are you okay with that, Steve?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So that is the big 13 pager, 5517. So should we just back up to 4362 since we are discussing anti-harassment?
Yeah. Did you say 1623, Daphne?
Well, no, 4362 is also anti-harassment.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I think it's a lot of similar kind of changes, so we might as well just,
Yeah. Language on page 2 is the same. What's struck on page 1 is the same.
jumping around is not easy in our little portal thing, is it?
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
That's right. This makes more sense. A lot of this, even the like page 3, that's the same as what we've already reviewed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Strange. Sexual conduct.
It's so similar. Is it the audience that we're dealing with? Is it one of those situations?
Yeah. Yeah.
Gosh, it looks like it starts out exactly the same.
You know what's funny is that in this one, like on page 5, it includes the parent and staff handbooks. Yet we had to add it in the other ones.
Well, we had no, in 5517, it was there, which is why I was like, why isn't it in 1422? Right.
Right. So it's in this one now.
Yeah,
That's so funny.
I know. I just don't understand why it appears to be almost totally duplicate.
So this one is an update to the classified staff policy.
Yeah,
Right.
classified, and the others professional.
It's at the 4,000s.
Oh,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
So the same questions that we had for 5517 would follow through on this one.
Yeah. Around the
Retention of
yeah,
and dissemination of documents.
right.
Okay. Steve, are you okay moving on?
Yep.
All right, so let's go back and try to go sequentially. 1623.
Yes.
And this is 504
Yes.
related. Here we go again with the,
Just the one change on page, when I move the paper, does it sound really bad? Does it
No.
bother you guys? Sorry. Page 2, C is crossed out. And then in the green on the district's website. And then we wanted to say,
in the student and staff handbooks.
yeah,
Yeah, it already says staff, so we just need to add student. This is a weird change to like take it out of the list and then put it in the district's website.
I'm on page 3.
Okay. And that's the definition of day changes, right? That was in all the others as well.
Right.
Page 4, the retaliation section was expanded.
Yeah.
Interesting, to change the, they removed work from the definition of days, but then defined days as work days. So that's how it goes. Legal update.
Gotta love it. So these again are pretty
Yeah.
consistent.
Everybody okay with page 4?
We are.
And, all right,
Onward to policy 1662. And this is administration anti-harassment. So.
Yeah.
Again, very much a overhaul with regard to it flows from the others.
yeah.
Yeah, it looks very much the same. So I guess just the same comments as we had before.
Yeah.
Any particular issues with this version of the anti-harassment?
No, I think it's just the same changes we made in the others.
I agree. Mhm.
Making great progress.
Woo, we're on a roll. Okay, let's move to, oh gosh, 1662. Did I miss that? I think that's just on there, on the agenda incorrectly. We're at 22.
Hey, one thing I want to go back to, sorry, on 1662, the
Okay,
box that says district will offer counseling to any person found to have been subjected to unlawful harassment and where the appropriate person who committed unlawful. I don't remember that being or checking that in others.
I think it was written in the others.
Yeah. So I think we just checked this one.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, yeah, it was just written in then.
Mhm.
Okay. 2260.
No.
It's 2240. 2240 is not part of that group.
Oh, I see. Sorry. Yeah.
So I don't know if you want to take it now or,
Yeah, let's take it now.
okay. 2240 policy number 2240. And it's titled Controversial Issues. And this is, they define it, a controversial issue is a topic on which opposing points of view have been promulgated by responsible opinion, and B, are likely to arouse both support and opposition in the community. And one line has been struck, and it says, however, such exercise or expression shall be limited to non-instructional time periods when students are free to associate.
This one, we have some sound effects.
So this basically expands the policy to allow students to
Yes.
responsibly discuss controversial issues during instructional time also.
Yes.
And do you feel, Steve, that this is this policy has been effective, and you are able to manage to it, I guess?
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with, just the relationship with kids. I remember, you guys will remember this, when students wanted to protest gun violence, they went out to at first they wanted to go on to Hamilton Road, and we talked with the police, we talked with their parents, and they were very thoughtful, and they agreed to go to a safer place in the stadium so they wouldn't be exposed to cars. And they walked out of class and they protested in the middle of the football field, and videos were taken and they shared it on social media, and then they went back to class. So it's not always going to be maybe smooth like that, but I mean, in that situation, it was just we had a meeting in our office, and that was when Bobby was here, and we helped them plan it, and we were grateful that the kids let us know so that we could do it safely. So I think it's fine. I think but there may be situations where it won't go like that.
Okay. Well, I mean, if
How do you guys feel about it?
I mean, I kind of felt like the first sentence, properly introduced and conducted.
Mm-hmm.
Consideration of such issues can help. I mean, so I think there's language in here that sets boundaries, and
Right.
I think, and it also says the proper educational use of a controversial issue. So I think that kind of correlates to maybe some of that instructional time that could be used.
Yeah.
And I think that, and it also doesn't obligate students who don't want to participate
Right.
to participate as well. So I think, I mean, I think it's fine.
Yeah, it's sort of the expectation is to do it in a respectful way that's not disruptive of others who don't share your views. Right.
Right. Yeah. I think it can be a good educational opportunity, right?
Absolutely.
That's
Yeah.
what our country needs more of, ability to have discussions of
Respectfully, right.
different perspectives. Okay, well, that was fun. Now we got to go back to these, legal.
Yeah, so this sentence I think is good. Right under C, the next section, controversial issues must be presented in the ordinary course of classroom instruction and is not substantially disruptive to the educational setting. It's kind of what you were talking about, Jennifer, that it has to. And if there's other issues, hopefully the kids have a good relationship with principals and assistants, that they're gonna, come forth and announce, what or share before it gets announced and becomes, out of control what they want to do. I mean, we have a history of listening to them and allowing them to do it.
I know my father-in-law taught current events at Gahanna schools. So this would have been a very important policy in order to be able to do that well.
Yeah. I used to get the newspaper into my classroom and I would teach, we would do writing by using the newspaper. And one time a student said to me, "Oh, current events, we did that last year." So that was great. Yeah, I think it's a great, I think, it teaches them how the Constitution works, the Bill of Rights. I think it's appropriate.
Okay.
Okay.
And moving on to 2260, we're back into the non-discrimination and access to equal educational opportunity.
Right.
And this deals more with regard to curriculum content and
Yeah.
training and support. And it looks like, again, focusing on level setting the definitions across all related policies, appointing that male and female compliance officer. Again, on page 3, we can choose A to include the staff and parent-student handbooks.
Yeah.
I've never heard them referred to as a parent handbook before, but I guess as an elementary student, they really do feed more to the parent than the student.
Daphne, wait a second. Are you on 4123?
I am on 2260, I thought.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm on 2262.
2260.
It's
Just regular 2260, not point.
Yeah, I got the wrong. Sorry about that. Okay.
You're going paper on us tonight, huh? Steve?
Yeah, I got both, but I think this is working better for me.
I print some of them that I felt like I needed to dive into a little more as well. But interestingly enough, E at the top of page 2, through the equity project, this may actually get attention that is warranted. So do you see on top of page 3 there, Steve, where we can add A?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Then the rest of it to me looks to be similar to the others.
Yes.
And the legal question from N through R.
Right.
At the end again.
Yep.
And we do have an option on page 6. So we're going to go with, if we're going to be parallel to our previous decision, we want the appeals process added. So it would be the top of page 7.
Right.
retaliation section, I think is the same. And then as Matt added, O through R.
Yep.
We'll move this on. Any other questions on 2260?
I'm good.
I think it's good.
Okay. All right. And so 2260.01 is discrimination based on disability. So it
Yes.
narrows it a little bit more. I was looking at the wrong one, so let me switch over here.
Very similar changes.
Yeah. So just thinking this through though, with regard to the compliance officer, would it make sense to not have the special education director be a compliance officer?
Yeah, that might be,
Since the original,
yeah, that's a good point.
Are you saying there might be a conflict at some point, Daphne?
well, I think it would
I'm-
it put her in a tough position, right? If
Yeah,
she's been part of the team that, or he or she, whoever the special ed director is, that would have would have directed a different position. I think that just would be, we're putting that person in a bad position.
Yeah.
see what you're saying.
Yeah, let me ask that question while we're asking these other ones.
Okay.
If there's like a conflict of interest, I think. For 504s and special ed.
Right, for that 0.01 particular one.
Yeah.
And the difference, they have that OCR complaint on this particular one that they haven't
Yeah.
had any others. And it ends with the retaliation, which is the same as the others.
Mhm.
Any other thoughts on 2260.01?
I'm good.
Looks good to me.
All right, we're moving on to 2266, which is non-discrimination on the basis of sex in education programs or activities. This is where all those changes to Title IX probably are going to come through. And they do. We had made some of these changes, right? So it's not, where are my notes here? Yeah, so this is just the revised to reflect, we did this policy a little while ago. This
Yeah.
one just includes the definition of rape as defined in January 2021. Update to the Title IX work.
Yeah.
The rest of them came through in May of 2020.
Yeah, very few changes.
Yeah, it's just that updating of the rate definition and
Yep.
related. I don't think we have much leeway on any of this documentation. This is all much more
No.
regulatory.
Yeah, there's another minor on page 11, but I think that's also, it just is some cleanup language. I don't think it's substantive.
I agree with that.
Yeah, though. Boy, it seems like they added some bigger words. Sometimes. Going forward or backwards? Okay, any other changes on that front?
Yep.
Okay, now we're looking at 3122
Yeah.
or 3112, I think it is. Oh no, that's board and staff communication.
Yeah, I think you were right. 3122.
We're going to go to 3122.
Yeah.
And that's non-discrimination and equal employment opportunity. And again, that's up in that block where these are all the repetitive changes.
Right.
I happen to notice on that last one we did, 2266, that the title was executive director of special education. And then these others have had special education directors. I don't know that it's relevant, but I just noticed that difference.
Oh, okay.
Those kind of things get me too. And then I was thinking, like, even with the parent student handbook, it's like, okay, maybe just a note to Kimberly to make those all consistent.
Yeah.
So if we're going to do parent/student, just, I think it is a little more professional and it kind of adds consistency between the different policies.
Which should be the title of what we have it. And yeah, I'll when I send her my summary email, I'll make that.
Yeah. I think we prefer student handbook, but
Yeah. I think that's what it says.
we've been calling it that. So I think maybe just make it consistent that way.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so 3122, this one is more of an equal employment opportunity approach to the subject matter.
Yeah.
Although the definitions and the it all looks very, very similar. And this one, staff handbook, would be appropriate, right? Because it's directed to that.
And then we just continue with the appeal process on make that same choice to make it consistent, right?
Yeah. Page 5.
On
Yeah.
page
Yep.
5. Mm-hmm. We have retaliate, and then we have the same O through R options for the retention of records.
Right.
Other than that, very similar.
Okay.
And guess what? 3123 is going to be similar too.
Yes.
We're extremely efficient tonight.
It's like carbon copies,
I
right?
know, right?
Different titles, different numbers.
Yeah, but you guys are being really efficient. We're cooking with gas here. So even though
I just have to compliment whoever, I don't know, says Kimberly put this, the spreadsheet together. This was really helpful.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
staff
that
it
was,
all together like this was really good.
this is her idea. Yeah,
It's wonderful. It's really helpful.
yeah, it does help a lot.
Yeah. All right. So all those changes are the same that we've already discussed, unless somebody has picked something up that I didn't.
Yeah, I think it's good.
All right. And then 3360. Oh, wait. How did 3242 pop in there? Oh, because that's on our revisit list.
Yeah,
We'll skip that for the time being. And go to 3362. This is anti-harassment from the perspective of employer.
yeah.
So
Gonna check obscene gestures.
on page 1, though, do we want to check the box about offering?
Oh, yeah,
counsel?
yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. I'm sorry, Steve. I just was.
No, I think it's good. I missed that one. So yeah, I checked that. And then also on page 3, obscene gestures.
Mhm.
This has parent and staff handbooks again. So is it student and staff handbooks?
Yeah, I would say student and staff
Yeah.
handbook.
Right? Because this and this particular version, isn't this on the staff level?
Yeah.
3000s?
Why would it have parent at all as an option?
I think maybe some districts may do a parent handbook, but I think when we would really confuse people because we call it the student handbook.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just seems like it shouldn't even be a parent or student shouldn't be an option in this one at all. It should just be staff.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, right. Because it's about,
The audience is the
HR.
staff. Mhm.
yeah. That's a good point.
Okay, so we have changes on page 1 and page 5, right? Is
Yep.
the-
And page 3.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, we're including the leering. Wait, I missed that.
Obscene gestures.
Oh, I'm sorry. On F, you're right. All right. How the? Okay. All right. Anything else on 3362?
I don't think so.
Moving on to 4122. Oh no, that's 4112. Let me keep moving. 4122. Non-discrimination and equal employment opportunity. This is geared for the classified staff, but it's
Yes.
all of the same features as we just went over for the certificated staff.
Yeah. So staff handbooks, check.
Are we okay with the 3 known changes?
I'm good.
Yeah.
Okay. 4123, which is the 4123, which is the section 504 ADA prohibition against disability discrimination in employment. Very similar, or exactly what we had for the teacher piece.
Yeah.
Certificated. Use the right term here.
Staff handbooks.
Yep. Any additional comments or discussion on that?
Looks good.
Yep.
Same as certificated. Okay. So we've already touched on 4362 and 5517. So the next on our list is 7440.01. And this is one of two that really were inspired by the whole COVID crisis last year. This one is due to the increase in the use of the virtual or the online learning. This policy is being revised to allow the district to use pre-recorded lessons or observations of an online or virtual lesson serving as part of an employee's evaluation. So 744.01. Just make sure I'm on the right one. And I guess we need to choose an option to be the first sentence. I would prefer the second one. I don't know how others feel. In order for to protect board property, promote security, and protect the health, welfare, and safety of students and staff, the board authorizes the use of video surveillance and electronic monitoring on school property.
Yeah, I think it's not intended to protect. It's not about crime deterrence, right?
Right. So,
Yeah, I would say the second one as well.
you mean the second paragraph, right? After the or?
Yes.
Okay, me too.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that.
All right. It is, this one is, so this one is dealing a lot with safety. I don't think,
On this one, I prefer option 2.
at the top of page 2.
Yes.
Did we, on page 1, check those boxes that security staff and administrators are authorized to carry portable video,
Down here. Yeah.
and that the board authorizes security personnel to use body-worn video cameras while on duty?
That's
So I wouldn't check 1. We don't do that. Security staff. But I believe our SROs do. So the board authorizes security personnel. So the second one, body worn video cameras while on duty, but prohibits them from being operated while individuals routinely patrolling restrooms. Do you want me to check the law in this? Because I'm not sure about this one. I might want to check with Nicole on this.
I think we definitely do and need to check. And then I would also want the words SRO or, you know,
Yeah, I want to learn more. I mean, I think number two is the most appropriate, but I just want to see what her take is.
And we have at the high school, don't we have a front desk person or the welcome area?
Yeah,
And they're considered campus supervisor,
they are.
but people, I think, could construe that there's part of the safety team. So I think the cleaner we define this so that people know.
Yeah, they don't carry cameras, but yeah, just making sure our definitions line up of what this means.
Steve, we all carry cameras if we're carrying our phones, right?
It's true.
So
Yeah, that's true.
I think we need to have this policy.
Oh yeah, so you're right. That one's a different. Yeah, it's not body worn. You're right. Okay. Yeah, I'll check this out.
And I think, should we also have Matt review it from the security camera perspective?
Yeah,
Not Matt Campbell, sorry, Matt.
Matt Blackwell.
I'm
Yeah.
not reviewing it from that perspective.
Okay, so we're just going to table this one, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. I'm still. At the about a third of the way down on page 2 is where is the introduction of the pre-recorded lessons and using it, you know, as part of an employee's evaluation.
Yeah.
And was that discussed during negotiations or in a previous MOU conversation, this whole policy? I know it was part of the MOU for last year, right?
Yeah.
Because we had people working remotely. But is it something that sunsets or is it going forward?
Yeah, I don't believe we have this in our current contract or the tentative agreement that, so I'll check with her on this as well.
Yeah, so there's a couple fronts to table this one on, right? So
Yeah.
let's do that. They're used to spend time on it when we know it needs to have a different set of eyes.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving forward to 8450.01. And this is, again, another COVID-related one, protective facial coverings during pandemic/epidemic events.
I do have a concern on the first page regarding the addition of the school bus stop. My concern is that we don't have an enforcement mechanism in place. There's no school employee that's observing the school bus stops. And the only reporting mechanism is one student reporting on another. So that's my concern, is that we're creating a rule where we can't enforce it and we can't monitor it either.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense. I read it more like the students who are waiting for the bus outside of the school.
On school property. Yeah.
Property, but if we need to clarify that, maybe that's the clarification that needs to be made.
Yeah.
I think if we add on school property, right?
Right.
Or waiting for a school bus outdoors on school property.
I think that would be more appropriate, because then you should have teachers outside watching if there's anything egregious going on. It's just, I just don't want to burden the school bus drivers with a reporting duty that they're busy
Yeah.
enough.
You know,
And they're-
technically under the law, conveyance to and from school is school. So this technically the school bus could be construed as school. So I could get some clarity on this one. And then, you know, they just,
but the bus stop,
yeah. Yeah, that's
tricky.
so if there was a altercation at the bus stop, we would consider that part of school. And we could consequence the students for fighting. So
Right.
I don't know if this really applies to masks. So do you want me to check this one out?
In my opinion, either we add the term on school property, which would include the buses,
Yeah,
the transportation to and from, we add school property, or it's just too difficult when they're just standing on an easement and the school bus driver isn't there yet, and there's no altercation, so there's no evidence of anything happening other than so-and-so stood within 2 feet of me.
yeah. I mean, I'm good with making sure it's school property, which includes on the bus. You're right, Matt. We're not going to be able to monitor it. Technically, if we saw them, we could, we could reach out to the family. But I think, we don't want to play big brother. I mean, I think it's at the end of the day, it's fine at making sure it's on the school bus. If you guys want me to check further, I can. But we're not gonna have the ability to really know. So
Above that, we have to make a choice of
right.
students shall wear a face mask unless they are unable to do so for a health or developmental reason, I think has been the policy, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So should that be the box that's X'd?
Yes. And the one above that as well.
Well, I'm sorry. What do you mean that?
Oh, no.
Where it's an or, so if
Yeah.
we choose,
No, I mean, there's a checkbox right above it. Face masks, shields will be provided by the school district
oh, sure. I'm sorry.
employees. So we do that.
Mhm.
I'm good. Do we need a sunset built into this policy? I wasn't able to find a clause where it basically deems the policy.
I think as long as a
sunset.
pandemic is still,
I just didn't see that language in the policy. That
the
as
name
long
of the
as
policy, I think the policy is during pandemic/epidemic events. So until the pandemic is deemed to be under control and no longer a pandemic, the policy applies.
right.
Mhm.
So should we identify the authoritative body who determines that?
I think it says in alignment with public health officials and in accordance with government edicts and including any pandemic plan and developed by the district's pandemic response team.
This is actually, I don't think that first paragraph is actually, I guess maybe, I don't know if that's what we do. It says during times of elevated communicable disease, community spread, pandemic or epidemic, the superintendent will issue periodic guidance through Board of Education plans / resolutions. Like we haven't actually, the board hasn't.
We haven't had a resolution on wearing masks or anything like that. Is that what you mean, Jennifer?
Yeah, I mean, so maybe that's part of the answer to this question is maybe this just needs to be cleaned up to kind of reflect a little bit more about now that we've been through a pandemic.
Right. We know
And then it says, blah, 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 and including any pandemic plan developed by the district's pandemic response team. And it's capitalized. So like, do we have a pandemic response team? We've got, COVID task force,
Yeah.
committee, and we've got, administrative teams. So I just wonder if
we make it fit to us.
Yeah, maybe this needs to be able to a little bit too, because that might end up ultimately answering Matt's question, is that if we can put some structure around that.
Yeah, it feels like we're trying to, by going with this, we'd be trying to force it, and it would be, the waters would be muddy. I think we can make this fit what we have actually done.
Yeah, I think Jennifer's right. Yeah, cleaning up that first paragraph is going to make a big deal, and will also provide us direction as to what a sunset looks like. It will allow the COVID task force, or whoever we deem to be the final say on this, probably someone within the district as a final say, as far as when the masks are no longer needed. But it really should be identified within the policy who has that final say.
Yeah, one of the things on our recent superintendent call is if the governor and ODH follow the CDC's most recent guidelines, if you're vaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask outside. We're kind of talking about that. We're not going to know necessarily who's vaccinated and who isn't. So I don't think anyone's going to change the mask mandate from now until the end of the year based on that, even if they're outside. So yeah, I think
well, I think that's a great example though of like how things are changing and evolving even still yet now,
Yeah.
as much as we know and as much as the information is out there. And I think we've become a lot more sophisticated in our knowledge and data collection and communication, but it just goes to show how quickly things are continuing to evolve. And so I think that first paragraph just needs to reflect the fact that there's a decision-making process or matrix that's in place.
Yeah. And I wonder, I mean, this is primarily written, right, for face coverings, and we really haven't had an issue, I mean, that doesn't mean we, in the future, we might, if we require masks next year, there might be some people that, take umbrage to that, but it feels like this policy is trying to do a lot, right? It's not just about face coverings. It's, reassigning students to virtual environments. So I would like to talk with Nicole and see if we can come up with something that's a little more relevant to us.
I'm good with that.
Are you guys okay with that?
Okay,
That
so
sounds
we're gonna
great.
I agree. Let's table it as well.
I think there are some places where, there was some difficulty in protests about masks, but our community's been pretty reasonable about it. So I'll work with her on this, and maybe we'll broaden it to include COVID task force things and language on ODH, and I'll get her recommendation as to whether or not we need a policy like this. Is that okay?
Right. I think I would keep it single subject though. I mean, if
Do you think just mask covering?
well,
Yeah.
what else? I mean, nothing else have we had a universal
Yeah.
right? because we have had children in hybrid, we had students in distance. I mean, if you think about, there's nothing that was universally applied other than perhaps the facial coverings for in-class students and athletes and things.
Yeah.
But getting a understanding of why the policy needs to be and customizing it to our structure and
Yeah.
a task force team and reliance on Ohio Department of Health or Franklin Health or however our work needs to be, but
Yeah.
it definitely can use some work.
Yeah, I mean, we could have language in here about the task force and, looking at recommendations from ODH, FCPH about mask wearing and get the task force to weigh in if it's a question about whether we should wear them or not.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. So moving on to 8,500 food service. And I think there were just some changes to focus on reducing any type of attention that students who may not be able to pay for their meals would get. And so there was, sorry, flip too far here. It starts out broadly, oddly. On page 2 up 3, the policy, we need to have a plan about addressing feeding students with unpaid meal balances without stigmatizing them. And like for Hannah, we have an amazing program, right? That has limited or eliminated the need for that type of negative situation.
I do have a question about that. Obviously, we want to avoid stigmatizing. That makes total sense. I try to think of ways that we could be doing that right now as far as our current process is concerned. Do we still have peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for kids who don't have money? Do they go to a separate place to get their food? And do they get separate different food? Because I know in the past we have.
Yeah, we stopped that, Matt. We had the Fill My Tummy Fund, and PTOs and local businesses made donations. And so students were able to get a hot lunch and they weren't having to make that choice. Yes. And it worked for a while. Mm-hmm. And then the pandemic hit and now it's we have the ability to feed everyone. There's been a lot of latitude with that. So it's we haven't since March of 2020, we really, the Fill My Tummy Fund hasn't been relevant. But before that, it was you had to get a cheese sandwich if you didn't have, and we just didn't think, we thought that was stigmatizing. So we found a way. We couldn't, the law wouldn't allow us to have families have balances carrying from at the end of the school year into the next. So we were able to kind of pay those off. And we did have some families that had 8 or 9, 10 lunches in a row, and there were phone calls made about that. So yeah, we don't, I imagine when we get back to normal, we'll still have the Fill My Tummy Fund. It's worked well.
That's great. And I think I on one hand, I definitely want within the cafeteria, it should really not matter whether the kid can pay or not. From an accounting standpoint, we should probably take a look and closely monitor that financial impact.
Yeah.
Just so we make sure that it's covered and we kind of have have an idea of what the impact is for those of us who are a little more bean counter minded.
Yeah. Okay.
I think currently all the meals are basically free, provided by the government, so we don't have the issue this year.
Great.
Okay, and that was pretty much the only real change to 8500. Are you okay to move on to 8510?
Yeah.
I'm good.
Okay. So 8510 is wellness, and this is necessitated every 3 years, or at least every 3 years. We have to review them according to our U.S. Department of Agricultural guidelines. And it looked to me there were a couple of changes. Add free drinking water availability was one of the changes. I think it's at top of page 2. C5, free drinking water shall be available to students during designated meal times.
Mm-hmm.
Replace the water fountains with those water bottle refillable. That's really awesome.
I actually have a question about that. Is that made though accessible to kids who might not have, students who might not have a water bottle, that they can have a plastic bottle that they can fill up?
I've seen kids like using these. Yeah.
Okay, just
Yeah.
And then a little further down on page 2, goes back to the previous policy. Basically, the food service program will provide students affordable access to varied nutrition food, regardless of unpaid balances and without stigma.
Mm-hmm.
And then they talk about a wellness committee that includes parents, students, and representatives of the school food authority, educational staff. Do we have a wellness committee? I know we do. I just didn't know if there was one that parents were part of.
Yeah. I know that Linda has had meetings with parents about healthy meals. I'm not sure if it's called the wellness committee.
I think I was on it. I think I attended some of those as a board member, and there were parents there, and we talked about like healthy, like some like grab bag healthy stuff.
Yeah.
But it's been a long time, and I think they evolved somewhat, but I'm not sure. I can't remember what they evolved into. So this isn't very helpful, but I know at least it.
Yeah.
Here.
Because at the top of the next page, it says that the superintendent shall report annually to the board on the wellness committee's progress and its evaluation of the policy's implementation. So it's almost like there's goals. If you have progress, right, you would have goals that you're trying to evaluate.
Yeah, I think it was in existence. I just heard from Sue. She was on it. She thinks there's a pause on it because of the pandemic.
Okay.
So yeah, I know that Linda's had some meetings.
So if nobody else has a question, I think there was a reference to, and why am I not seeing it here? With regard to school-based activities, about access, where's my notes? Question about access to all our outdoor facilities. Where am I missing that? Maybe it's in ours and not. Oh, I have it printed. Hold on. It's with regard to these activities, number 2. There it is. So it's at the top of page 2. C, with regard to other school-based activities, the district shall, 2, students, parents, and other community members shall have access to and be encouraged to use the school's outdoor physical activity facilities outside the normal school day. And I know that many of our tracks are open, but I don't think the high school stadium is open, right?
It's not. I was going to scale the fence the other day to look for my glasses that I lost.
I wish I could have seen that.
I decided not to do it, but I'm just saying, I knew that actually I could see very clearly that it was not accessible.
Thank you for that research for our policy committee. So I think we need to put, with the exception of the GLHS stadium, right, in order to make this proper. And I also wonder, I had girls, so I didn't have a baseball player, but isn't the baseball field locked up too out at Blacklick?
Yeah, it is.
So,
Not all the facilities. I think that you can have access to the JVB fields, but the varsity JVA field is locked up.
okay, so just so that we're stating our policies are correct, I think we need to put those exceptions in.
Yeah.
What did you call it? The JV? Does the baseball stadium have a name?
Well, like JV, so like the junior varsity B team, like freshman team, plays, there's like one field, and then the varsity and the JV A team usually play on the varsity field because they always have games on opposite nights, because like when one is home, the other is away.
So it should just be varsity field.
I think so, or like there's probably an official name of it. It's not a stadium, but it's just like that kind of field area. Yeah, and all the appurtenances. So yeah, it's the varsity field.
Okay, all right. Okay. Did anyone else have anything else with regard to wellness?
Looks good.
Okay. So do we want to hit, I think 2605 and 3242 were policies that we tabled in January. And Jill and Steve made proposed changes that are ready for us to review and put up for approval. So do you want to head back to 2605?
Yeah.
And then you will hit shoot, not too far. And 2605 is program accountability and evaluation. So Steve, you guys worked to make this correlate
Yeah.
to the OS process, right?
Yep. Yeah, so we added, we took away what's in red there and we added the green. Recommend improvements.
Okay.
And then check those three.
Anybody have questions on that?
Those look good.
Okay, so we'll send those for approval. And then 3242 is professional development and licensure. And let me get that on. And again, this is one that Steve
Yeah.
and Bill worked on. And so it conforms to the negotiated agreement with the GJEA. And it establishes a committee with regard to the professional development process. What's the consortium piece?
So this is something that we're not in one, but it's if we ever wanted to join one, this language would allow us to do it.
Oh, okay.
So it's just give us latitude. It's not anything we're executing now.
Okay. Anybody else have, sorry, my light is a little dim here. Anybody else have any comments on either of those?
No,
Maybe
I'm
phones, right, so that you can use your committee to establish what you're doing.
Right.
Okay, and then lastly, there are 3 versions of board staff communications. 148.1, 3112, and 4112. And so I was doing some thinking about this, and when you read this policy, it made me wonder, and maybe Steve, Mike, somebody knows, but it's almost like this policy comes from a time when people wrote letters and they needed to be disseminated by a central point, right? The superintendent shall receive and forward such communication from staff members to the board. It's almost like it was a paper time. I just wonder what the genesis of this is. And I went and I looked at Bexley City's policy. They don't have a policy that looks at board staff communication that way. They do have a policy called board operation goals. And one of their goals is to concentrate, it's the collective effort and policy making and planning responsibilities. But number 6 is to conduct board business openly, soliciting and encouraging broad-based involvement in the decision-making process by the public, students, staff, and staff. And so it's a whole different approach than our, and I wish Burl was here tonight because I think she was one of the people that asked to have this on the agenda. Do you think it would behoove us to table this until such time as she can be part of the conversation?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I was hoping that I thought we would table it anyways to maybe go back and ask for a little bit more research. I mean, this was a piece that was also important to me. And
Yes.
Part of the reason, and I would agree, definitely, like what you read from Bexley's policy is more in the spirit of, I think, the kind of environment and community that we have and want to maintain and we want to perpetuate, right? I mean, that's that community spirit. I think that, my issues with this have been, this seems like punitive and it seems restrictive and impractical in some ways. I think that it also violates one of our board things that says that, we're going to have a liaison to the GJEA, but yet they're not allowed to talk to that liaison, right? I mean, that doesn't even make any sense. I think by kind of thinking about this in a different way, I think that there's a way to encourage, community and communication without like the fear, right? Was, which we heard, I think from 1 or 2 principals, right? Which is, okay, is a complaint from a staff member, no matter who that staff member is, going to go right to a board member before it's followed its due process in that structure. And so maybe there's some language that kind of addresses that, right? Like that kind of protects against that worst case scenario. If a board member, you would hope, would be like, hey, did you go through the proper channels, and kind of ask those questions. But if somebody didn't know, or if it, those are difficult conversations to have. So I like the idea of thinking about this in a different way, not creating a channel to usurp the process, to usurp principals or directors or whoever that case might be, but to actually like really encourage just communication and community.
Exactly. And so that's where I was, as I kept reading this policy, it's almost like we're trying to adapt something that existed a long time ago when there was one source of communication, right? And maybe two.
Yeah, I think it's really easy to write language like that just describes the process, follow the channels, try to get it resolved with the principal. If it doesn't, escalate it up to central office if it doesn't get resolved, and then have a conversation with, I think that's what Jennifer is getting at, have a conversation with the board member.
Yeah, well, I think I'm getting at like two things. I think there's this what to do if you have a complaint kind of thing, which is what I think that's the description. But I think what Daphne's talking about, what I would like to see is some examples that are like Bexley and maybe some other places that just kind of they're written from the standpoint of encouraging community and encouraging the school community, that, not written from a standpoint of like in some ways this seems punitive to me, or this seems, I don't know, like it's just restrictive. Like this isn't about building a school community. I think the intent of this was probably to make sure that there was a proper chain of command, in an organization, but I think that can be achieved differently. I think we need to have something that really just reflects who we are and who we want to continue to be, which is, just open and collaborative and have that spirit of community together.
Well, and
Yeah.
it builds on our student focused one, right? That relationships are where development comes from, right? And proactive, positive growth. And this almost is in conflict with that, right? So if we want to be pure in our approach, then we need to rethink, are these three versions of the same thing in essence? Are they helping our district at this point? I don't know, right? I mean, we want a healthy district, but a healthy district is where the parent goes to the principal or the teacher, and then the principal then goes to the superintendent. If we get a complaint, we send it to the superintendent, right? And so I think that coming at it from that perspective as what I think Jennifer's asking us to look at doing, versus the punitive perspective.
Yeah.
So
I think you guys are right. I think you're both on board. I read through this a couple times also, and it feels reactionary rather than proactive. It feels like it's reacting to something that had happened rather than a culture that we want to create. And so I think the two of you are right on board with kind of a direction where to go from here.
So Steve, maybe you and I can take a stab at putting something together and
Yeah.
then we'll replace, present it to the committee and the board and and go out from there. And
Yeah.
And I have one more suggestion too, and I don't know, I've made this suggestion before, and if it's not a good idea, it's okay if the rest of the board doesn't agree, but I also think this might be an opportunity for us to explore language where there's a request to form a to create a regular cadence in meetings between the superintendent, the president and vice president of the board, and the the staff leadership, whether it's, OPSI or GJA or whoever that might be, but to have quarterly touch base meetings, right?
I was gonna, that should definitely be part of it, in my opinion, because it creates a formal, I think we should address a formal and an informal pattern of interaction, right?
Right.
Like, so if we approach this, that we want to cover both the formal and the informal,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a great approach to take.
Yeah.
That meeting.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Okay. All right. So anybody else have any other ideas on policies? Okay, well then I think we can conclude the meeting at 8:21, and I hope you all have a great weekend.
Thanks. That was
Thanks,
really,
everybody.
thank you guys. That was really well done.
Yeah, it was very helpful. Thanks, everybody. I know this isn't easy, so
We
Have a
gotta
good
do
night.
it.
tedious, but we need to get it done. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks to Kimberly too.
Yeah, oh yeah, she did a great job setting this up. Have a good weekend.
Thank
Good night,
you.
everybody.
Good night.
Bye, Mike.